Building collapse is a condition that we have to consider at any fire, no matter whether it's a small fire or a large fire. But it's a very important consideration. The building and the structure itself may have been compromised prior to our arrival. In today's environment, the origin of the fire could be an explosion, could have been a chemical release, could have been any number of things. So even if it's a small fire, we arrive on scene, we have to be considerate of the fact that that building structure might have been compromised somehow in that fire. So we want to look at the building itself, what kind of condition it's in prior to the fire, if we know that, what kind of condition it is when we arrive. Where is the fire? Is it a fire that's involving contents of the building, or has the fire progressed into the actual structure itself? Now, we always use the term structure fire or building fire, but in technicality, building fire is when the fire has transgressed or gotten into the actual components of the building. When the building is on fire, that's when it's very severe. That's when you have to be concerned, because in today's environment, the way buildings are put together, lightweight truss construction, the different factors that are involved, the construction materials, once they're involved in fire, they don't usually hold up very well. So we have to be careful of that. When we look at a room and contents fire, and that's really what we should be responding to most of the time, is a room and contents fire. That's when only the contents of the room are on fire. We go in, we put it out, it's no big deal. But once that fire has gotten into the actual structural members of the building, we're on a time clock. The time clock is a degradation of those structural members and their support and ability to maintain that structure. So once it gets into those structural supports, we've got to understand how much time we have to operate. That's why it's very important in command structures that a time clock be added. You may have been on scene and you can hear dispatch calling your commander and telling him that he has 10 minutes into the emergency or 20 minutes into the emergency. Those time hacks are very important, because if an incident commander realizes after 30 minutes of fighting a fire that he's had very little or no progress in being able to contain it, you have to start thinking about what is that fire doing to that structure, and are we creating a bigger problem? Another thing to consider when talking about building collapse is the amount of water we put on a building. If it's a very large building and we're putting 1,000 gallons a minute and we're on that fire for over 20 minutes, do a simple math. That's a lot of water we're putting on side of that building. That's over 20,000 gallons in the period of time we're there. We know that water weighs about 8.35 pounds per gallon. So in that case, we're putting quite a bit of weight on top of that building. It's 160,000 pounds, several tons, more than that building was designed to hold. If the water is not coming off in a fast manner and it's being contained on the floors, or it's being contained or absorbed on products inside the building such as paper or other materials that might absorb it, it adds an extreme amount of weight. So we have to be aware of that and how that's going to affect that building's ability to stay intact. So again, there are a lot of considerations that we have to make in anticipating the potential of a building collapse. First of all, what's the building in when we get there? What kind of condition was it in prior to the fire? Second, what has the fire done to the building, or what have the conditions leading up to the fire done to the building? Was it an explosion? Were there a shock to the building? Is there an extreme amount of heat involved in or exposed to certain structural members of the building? Third, how much of the fire progression has had an effect on that building? Has the fire been there a while? Has the building been on fire a long enough period of time where there is some transgression or destruction of the structural members, breakdown? Next, we have to consider how much water we've put on the building. What is happening to that building as we put more and more water onto it, and what is the potential for collapse? All of these factors are things we have to consider. In this week's discussion, I want you to take a look at all of the things that we talked about. I want you to take a look at the factors identified in the textbook. And I want you to make a comment on what you feel are contributing factors to the potential of building collapse. Make sure your discussion is posted before 11 p.m. on Tuesday night. Respond to your fellow students before 11 p.m. Saturday night. Again, this week's question is to focus on the things we've just talked about in the video and the things identified in your textbook, and discuss the different aspects of what causes buildings to collapse after they've been involved in fire. I look forward to a very good discussion, and remember, this is the week that your final research paper assignment is due, so make sure you have it in by Saturday night. Good luck and thank you.